Well, welcome to A Story with Joel Johnson. We are discussing the Shawshank Redemption. We're doing a trilogy. This is part 3, the final part of our trilogy. We discussed the first character was Brooks. We discussed that his prison was in his mind, as most of ours is. We discussed Andy in part 2. Andy had his actions. His actions spoke louder than his words. He had a vision. He had his dream. He had to get out of his prison, if you would, and he did. He found a way. And he fueled his actions through his desires and his visions and his goals and his plans. And today is part 3, where we're going to discuss the final character, and his name is Red. Now, Red was played by Morgan Freeman, and he even narrated the movie. So probably the most compelling character is Red. Now, Red had a problem with hope. He was kind of like Brooks. He was in prison, most of his adult life, and he believed prison was the only thing he was ever going to have. And he had a problem with hope. And Red described hope as a thing that can drive a man insane. And Red was resigned to the prison life. This was it. There's no need for hope. But Andy didn't feel the same way Red felt. And after a while, Red began to understand what Andy was trying to tell him and began to believe what Andy was telling him, that hope is an important thing. Now, many have resigned themselves to live in their own prisons of the mind. And I think that's what Red did. But Andy didn't. And Andy took action to get out of it, and we'll find that Red had to take some actions to get out of his prison as well. Now, Andy did everything he could do to instill some hope into Red. In fact, Andy told Red, there are places in this world that aren't made of stone. There is something inside that they, the prison guards or the world, can't even get to. And he said, Red, that's yours. And Red, that's hope. That's what's inside of you. The prison guards can't get to it. The prison life can't get to it. The drugs, the alcohol, the food addiction, the workaholic, the hiding behind parenthood, the fear, the anger, nothing can get to it. There's hope inside of you. And Red respected Andy, and he heard him loud and clear. Now the day came when Red was released from prison. And Red, like Brooks, had a very hard time in prison. Outside of prison, I'm sorry. He had a very hard time outside of prison, where Andy had a very hard time inside of prison. But Red had a very hard time. And Red was contemplating committing a crime so he can get sent back to Shawshank, to get back to the prison life, because he just didn't like the life of freedom. The only life he knew was the life of being in a prison. And most people have resigned themselves to a life of being in some sort of prison, whatever that may be. But the day came when Red decided it was time to go find Andy. Now, Red was very fearful. But you know what? Red felt the fear, but he did it anyway, because he had to. There's a saying that says, if you can't, then you must. And so Red was feeling this fear. And he knew, I really can't do it. It's really too difficult for a man my age to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see what happens. And he was reminded of the words of Andy. And Andy told him, I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Either get busy living or get busy dying. So when Red began his freedom, I call it his freedom march, he was going to go and find his freedom. He was going to go find his friend Andy in Mexico. And he was experiencing what Aristotle said. Aristotle said that hope is a waking dream. So here goes Red in Red's adventure, Red's march to freedom. He had a hitchhike. And then he had to find the money that Andy told him where the money would be for him to help him get across the border. And so he had to find this money. It was under a tree, under a stone. X marks the spot. Here it is. Well, Red had to go find it. And I remember when Red found the money, he was looking around, he was scared, you know. So he had to do a lot of things that he was not comfortable doing. Then here's this, convict, this ex-convict. He had to cross the border. I mean, he had a lot of hurdles to cross. But Annie told him how to do it. It was not an easy task, but what Red did is he followed the plan and he trusted the process. He followed it all the way through. And the further that Red went, the more that Zig Ziglar's words come to mind. Because Zig Ziglar said, go as far as you can see. And then when you get there, you will be able to see even further. And so Red had to take it step by step. He had to follow the plan, and he had to trust the process, and he had to put actions in there. Now, hope became renewed in Red because, again, Red's the narrator of the movie, and Red says, I find I'm so excited that I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement that only a free man can feel. A free man at a start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain. I hope I can make it across the border. I hope I can see my friend Andy and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it had been in my dreams. I hope. And that hope that Red felt gave him the fuel to go on. You see, your hopes and your faith and your desires and your plans must be the fuel behind your actions. Because if they're not, then you're running on fumes. You're running on somebody else's fuel. And if you're running on somebody else's fuel, you kind of think you're getting somewhere, but you're really getting nowhere. It's like running on a treadmill. You run on a treadmill, you may run 5 miles, but once you step off the treadmill, you find out you really ain't gone nowhere. Nothing really happened. A lot of people do that in life. They run on this thing called the treadmill, and they get nowhere. They work harder. They work faster. They do things better. But when it's all said and done, they're living in somebody else's dream and not their own. And they're no further along. They're just another day older. So I hope that you will use hope to fuel your dreams, to fuel your aspirations. And hope is just basically thinking there could be something better out there. And I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a try. I'm not going to be like Brooks and be locked up with the prison that is in my mind. I'm going to be more like Andy, who had a plan and a goal and a desire. And Andy did what he set out to do and got out of his prison. And if you can't do what Andy did, you can at least do what Red did. Red heard about a plan, and he followed that plan, and he trusted the process. And he made that plan his own plan. And he was renewed by the hope that was instilled in him by his friend Andy. I hope you got something out of this. I really do. The trilogy is now over. Thank you so much for listening. May God bless you and have a great day.